to skip ahead a little bit here and just point out that some very recent work by Chung et al. Out of Taiwan have demonstrated that reflux in the jugular system has implications to other diseases: transient global ischemia, transient blindness, cough headache, primary exertional headache. So there are perhaps other things other than MS that are equally affected by this problem. All right, the final thing I'm going to show you here today is the role of measuring blood flow. And measuring blood flow is critical. Just looking at vessels is not enough. You need the functional information. So this is an example where we do a cross-section through the neck like this. And you can see here this dark, which means flow toward the heart in this case, and bright, meaning flow toward the brain, is such that the flow has an average velocity of about 10 centimeters per second. But somebody with MS, this comes back and follows Zamboni's criteria that it goes to 0 or negative for almost half the cardiac cycle. And you can show this very clearly. In this individual, all 4 of his major veins have reflux, not just one of them. And part of Zamboni's condition represents what happens in the vertebral veins too, not just the jugular veins. And it may be more rampant than that. Okay, I might be fearful. So I wanted to show you something else that's very interesting here. That in this individual, this blue line with the open circles in it are showing the very slow flow in one jugular. And then the other jugular is the dominant jugular. And so what can happen in some people, rather than show you that slide, I'm going to just discuss this with you. So you have to be patient with me for a minute, because he's not going to let me talk too much. Okay, I'm going to show you another example here, and you can review some of these later. Is that, again, this blue line with the open circles represents the subdominant jugular. And it's very low flow, say 1 milliliter per second. Whereas this one is more like about 6. So the ratio of the dominant to the subdominant is about 6 to 1. Well, it turns out that a study done on the supratentorial craniotomies, where people have to have their neck twisted like this, and they're doing some operation in the spine, some of these people develop severe hypertension and cerebellar hemorrhages. That's starting to sound a little bit like what happens in the lesions over 10 or 20 years, but this is happening within hours. And that's because, in that case, they found that they were compressing the dominant jugular. So you see, you want to get your MR scan. You want to know what your blood flow is. Because if you have only one vessel draining the brain predominantly, you don't want to be compressing that vessel when you sleep. You don't want to be doing exercises or things that would be associated with compressing that vessel. So you really want to understand what your own situation is from the imaging component. And this final flow slide shows that some people have extremely low flows. This individual has a flow of only 6 milliliters. Most of us have 12 milliliters. So with that, and since he's standing up here, all right, I'm going to go to the conclusion slide in a moment. I did want to show this example here, though. Any of you have stents? One of the questions arises, can we image stents in MR? And the answer is yes, you can. These black lines represent the metal in the stents. And you can see this, and you can get an MR image from this. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go to the conclusion slide here. So I think what's important to recognize is that we all have to work together. The interventionalists need to work with the imaging people, need to work with the neurologists, and all of us need to work with the patients. It should be understood that this is so complicated that it's very unlikely we understand everything yet. And so it could be that new procedures will be required by the interventionalists. So very important for them to do imaging. They need to develop a consensus on how to do this. So if you're going to get something done in Poland or in the United States or in Mexico or wherever, that you know that people are doing things the same way. And so we did create a new society. It's called the International Society for Neurovascular Disease in the summer. We'll have our first annual meeting with Paolo in either Ferrara or Bologna in the spring of next year. And the idea behind this is to get this type of consensus, and also, of course, to have a voice for these neurovascular diseases that is not restricted by other societies or other biases. So we can present all this type of evidence by many of the people doing the research. And finally, I think the most important thing is that one thing Tom is trying to address is to make sure that we can collaborate on this research around the world. Because it's no good if one site does 50 cases. Zamboni's being criticized because he only did 65. SIMC, I think, has now done well over 500 or 800. Okay, so, but the point is, none of that's published. So we need to bring these together in a form that we run the same protocols, the same methodologies, and create a database from which we can analyze that data. Potentially within 1 year, we could have thousands and thousands of cases. And there will be no scientific arguing with that if we have that data at our fingertips. Thank you very much.